Alan Decker, who had won 3 of the first 4 races this year, finished 3rd. It was Jacques' first ride in 2 years.
2.5 years. Last time I was here was in '84, replacing Brad Ewing because he had got hurt. And same thing again this year was to replace Gary because he had got hurt, but he decided to come back and give me his backup sled, and it paid off.
Villeneuve's Canadian Tire IndyCar team has gone out of business. That equipment has been purchased by Can-Am standout Rick Moskiewicz. He calls it Mosquito Racing. Jacques' new arrangement this year might be with Hemelgarn Racing.
Scott Brayton is also involved, and the team has switched from Lola to March. And here's their new car. Yes, the new Marches are different. This, the ground effects emphasized road course version, side pods with rear airfoils directing air over the wheels, Lola-like, and much flatter pods. Flatter used to be for super speedway speeds. Look at that more streamlined nose, a far cry from March's traditional torpedo-like front. This is chassis number 3. Penske and Patrick received 1 and 2. And towering above it all, a new pyramid-shaped cockpit roll bar that's really a carbon fiber chassis member, not a roll bar at all. The rear shocks changed, now horizontal and parallel to the tub, tucked inside bodywork. All moves to make the air flow even smoother. There's a new wastegate system that has been rerouted, a stainless steel nest for the turbocharger to cradle in, out of the air but close to the heat of the engine, folded right to the bell housing of the transmission, and the rear wing. Larger, tall, low-riding. Last year, everyone expected to see this view of the Lolas, but March hopes to come in like a lion this year. Here is the first video we have seen of the new Lola on track at speed. This is Phoenix International within the last week. Mario has also been to Laguna Seca, both places near the track record already. This was supposed to have been private, but local media somehow maneuvered in, and we were fortunate enough to get this. Primer color and shot from a distance, we know, but at least you know they're getting ready too.
The Little Hoosier 100 is an indoor USAC midget race held annually at the Fort Wayne, Indiana Memorial Coliseum.
Here they come again.
The track is only a 1/10 of a mile, and there isn't much room for maneuvering. This trio of Bob Myers, Barry Reed, and Larry Hillerud played bump-em cars in the 4th heat. Bill Sager won the dash to turn 1 in the 100-lap main event, but Johnny Parsons claimed the top spot on the 14th lap. Sager's race ended at this peculiar angle against a stack of tires. Then Eddie Horn turned left a little too early in front of Eric Moore, Tom Bigelow, and Russ Gamester. Rich Vogler in number 2 has won the last 2 here, and despite a 9th-place start, has caught JP. Then as the 2 try to lap Bigelow, Wayne Arnold is over on his side in turn 3. But no problem, when it's time to race again, Wayne is ready. Vogler pulled in on lap number 69, and 10 laps later, Nick Finoro Jr., Hoosier Dome winner earlier this month, also called it quits. Parsons is challenged late by Terry Winty, who started next to last, but Parsons wins his first indoors since 1973.
8 more drivers have made the exclusive U.S. Millionaires Club. They are Danny Sullivan, Al Unser Jr., Kyle Petty, Steve Kinzer, Jeff Bodine, Tim Richmond, Ron Bouchard, and Dick Simon. Nicky Lauda has been hired by BMW to assist in the development of BMW's new European Touring Car Championship team.
In mid-January, a lot of crews pack up and head for the SCCA's Winter Nationals at Moroso Motorsports Park in Florida. For some, it's a chance to test their new chassis and get an idea how things will go later in the year. This Formula Ford class featured former Formula 3 champ and ex-Super V driver Tommy Byrne in a new Van Diemen. But on the pole was number 3 Rich Ballmer in a Swift. In all, 26 starters rolled out for the 20-lap, 45-mile race, and Ballmer led from start to finish. He was challenged early by number 14 William Adamy Jr., but Adamy dropped out with 5 laps to go. Stuart Crow in number 18 finished second. 15 Sports Renaults ran in the showroom stock class. Scott Lagasse, last year's National Sports Renault champion, finished first in his division, behind Corvettes of Bob McConnell and Bruce Caleb. Lagasse's victory came despite a spin on the first lap.
In our next segment, Daytona's better with bonnet on it.
And Supercrossers land on their bonnets. As the Daytona 500 draws closer, practice speeds continue to go up. The latest information from Ron Kendrick.
If the speeds being turned in during recent testing are any indication, this year's Daytona 500 will, without question, sport the fastest field ever. Already, a couple of dozen drivers have cracked the 200-mile-per-hour mark at the Daytona International Speedway. Of course, last year, Bill Elliott in the Ford Thunderbird was tough to beat on the super speedways, and chances are you'll find him at the front of the pack a lot this year. He'll be there with new company, however. In an effort to stay competitive with Million Dollar Bill, General Motors has made some off-season aerodynamic changes to their products, and the Pontiac, Chevrolet, and Oldsmobile drivers who tested the cars like the changes.
The car handles as good at 200 mile an hour as the other did at 195, so it's a definitely improvement. And you know, from there we'll have to go. We've not really raced against anybody with it and stuff like this, so we'll have to sort of see how it acts in a race.
When they put the rear wind in the car, it gave the car a little bit of stability. Well, now it lets us do some things that'll make the car run faster. So not so much am I pleased with a 2 or 3 mile an hour we picked up in speed, the fact that the car just drives a lot better than it did last year.
And how does Elliott feel about being one of the reasons for the sweeping changes in Detroit?
You know, I was thinking about that. That makes me feel pretty good. It might get me in the end, but all in all, felt pretty good.
So with the testing almost complete, there's nothing to do now but sit back and wait for one of the most competitive stock car racing seasons ever, and it all gets underway here with the Daytona 500. For ESPN Speedweek, I'm Ron Kendrick reporting from the Daytona International Speedway.
Neil Bonnet's 204.7 is the fastest practice lap so far. Teammate Darrell Waltrip's 203.8 is second quick. A Junior Johnson Oldsmobile tested at 198 and then was put back into storage. Greg Sachs will be the die-guard driver in the 500. He crashed his Pontiac, then came back to run at 203. Also above 203 was Rick Wilson driving for Morgan McClure. Tim Richmond spun and brushed the wall, then ran above 202. Bill Elliott's fastest so far at Daytona has been 202.7. No worry. As of this report, 25 have exceeded 200 miles an hour in practice for the Daytona 500, which is just a little bit more than 3 weeks away.
Willie T. Ribb's debut in Winston Cup racing may not come at Daytona because of difficulty in putting together a two-car team. Dave Marcus will run 15 Winston Cup events this year in the Helen Race Special Pontiacs and Ford, and the other 14 races in his own car. And Richard Petty has changed his mind and decided to seek re-election as Randolph County, North Carolina Commissioner.
AMA's Outdoor Stadium Supercross Series for 1986 began last week in Anaheim Stadium. Guess what Mickey Mouse City that's in? There is, however, nothing Mickey Mouse about the bravery of these riders. Here's a sampling of the animated thrills, some even before the official program started. Greg Nash got nailed doing some radicals. An unidentified rider in the 125s goes goofy, and JoJo Keller soars out of the pack, watch the right side, and dive bombs the hay bales. Here's another kamikaze attack on the innocent barriers surrounding the track. But after Tyson Boland easily won the 125 class, the 250 final was the finest seen in many months, maybe years. Scott Burnworth led to the second corner, but in one of those racing accidents, smashed down hard, stunned but returned. Another favorite, Brock Glover, grounded in lap 1 also. But over the 20 laps, the lead changed hands at least 8 times between David Bailey, number 6, and Rick Johnson, number 5. Here are just some of the passes. Move-by-move commentary is too distractive. Back and forth, they traded first place. Just as one seemed destroyed, back would come the other. They lapped the entire field except third place before Virginian Bailey survived as the winner.
Riders were also flying out of doors last weekend at Sunrise Valley, California, event number 3 in the 8-race Golden State Nationals. This is the 10th annual series, and it's attracted an international field. In the 125 Pro class, Jim Tarantino, Suzuki plate number 47, takes Moto number 1. But this Honda rider, Jeff Leask, here all the way from Australia, wins Moto 2, and that coupled with a third gives him the overall win. 250 cc's, it's a clean sweep for Jeff Ward on a Kawasaki. Tarantino, doing double duty today, puts together a second and third for a second overall in this class. The 500 Pro story is that of Phil Larson. Just now returning from serious head injuries in last year's Golden State, Larson gets the overall victory. 19-year-old Mark Banks from England, whose father Paul was a European star in the 60s and 70s, finishes second in both motos.
3 IndyCar drivers, the next added to the IROC field, and they are Al Unser Sr., Al Jr., and Bobby Rahal. A.J. Foyt will team with Danny Sullivan and R.A. Lyondike in a Preston Hen car at next month's IMSA opener at Daytona. And Tom Gloy will be Klaus Ludwig's teammate driving the Ford Probe this year. The car will not be ready for Daytona. And contrary to earlier reports, Bendix will continue to sponsor the SCCA Trans Am Series this year.
In our next segment, NHRA State of Drag Racing.
And a look at what's new in Top Fuel. Stay with us.
Last week, we examined the state of closed-circuit racing. Drag racing touches the grassroots more than any other. At 50,000, NHRA's membership is the largest. Larry talked with NHRA President Dallas Gardner.
You say that an emphasized area of improvement will be facilities, and this takes on added significance because you have found out that there are more new fans at each event than we really all expected.
Drag racing doesn't just compete with other motorsports activities. We compete with a leisure time dollar for all sorts of things. 10 years ago, how many theme parks were there? There are just so many competitive things for people to do that we are finding it difficult to compete with the facilities that we run in. We have conducted research over the past year at most of our national events, and one of the things that we found is that we were having between 27% and 35% at each of the events of new first-time attendees. That got our attention. So we really feel strongly that for motorsports to significantly grow in the next decade, facilities are going to have to be substantially improved.
What about IHRA? Are they competition? Do you consider them peers, or who is your competition?
I don't think, Larry, that we really regard the IHRA as a significant competition in drag racing. Our competition really probably comes more from NASCAR and actually other areas of motorsports or even leisure time entertainment. There is a factor with the IHRA concerning the funny cars, because basically that's the only area where there's a crossover of competitors. There's a handful of funny cars that want to run both circuits. I don't know if it's practical to see the funny car racers try and run both series as they have in the last 2 years.
Well, that's the NHRA story, and next week comments from the other major league, the IHRA.
And the NHRA's next big event is in Southern California in 2 weeks, so this is an unlikely setting for this next story. That's Gary Ormsby's rig sitting at a subtle and formal industrial park in Indianapolis. Gambler Racing, Weiss Engines, and a couple of IndyCar teams among the shops that have sprouted here. Inside of Jackie Howerton's place, yes, the former dirt tracker, they're working on the latest for drag racing, streamliners. More body work, enclosed components, more ground effects. Ormsby, Garlitz, and Dick LaHaye will have them. These blueprints give you the space-age idea of how they'll look. In this angle, one sees how wide the design is. That bottom tray fits under the engine. This wood and fiberglass buck provides an indication of the finished product. Ormsby's will not have an enclosed cockpit, others will. Gary's sponsor wants the car at Pomona, so we'll see all-night sessions coming up.
Now here's this week's trivia question. Who was the first driver to win NHRA and IHRA Funny Car World Championships in the same year? A. Don Prudhomme, B. Raymond Beadle, C. Dale Poldy, D. Kenny Bernstein, or E. Billy Meyer? Bob will have the answer in a moment.
Here's the answer to this week's trivia question. All of those listed are former funny car champs, but B. Raymond Beadle has been the first and only driver to win funny car titles in both leagues in the same year, 1981.
For the true enthusiast out there, you remember there is outdoor auto racing in the winter. The International Ice Racing Association, though the biggest ice race may be the unsanctioned St. Paul this week, began a couple of weeks ago at Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. Called ice racing because they race on the frozen surface of inland lakes. Cars must be street legal. Series champ Indy racer Herm Johnson says powered by God. Now, this may not be turned to sweets at Indy, but gives you an idea of the flavor for spectators, their transportation, and of course, proper dressing for this off-below freezing activity. That first race, a predictable duel between last year's championship team, Menard Lumber, that's Johnson's team, and the Archers, Tommy and Bobby. Number one, the Menard team car, Jeff Brabham and Chris Menard driving. This week, three-time Formula One champ Jack Brabham comes out of retirement to drive it. Well, Herm qualified on the pole, became ill, and handed the driving chores over to owner John Menard, who did an excellent job against the more experienced Tommy Archer until Tommy, in his own words, slushed through.
And you may be a participant in the ice race this coming weekend in St. Paul. More on that next week on Speed Week, plus the Mickey Thompson Off-Roaders in Indianapolis. I'm Bob Jenkins.
I'll try to conjure up the courage, and I'm Larry Newber. We leave you this week with more from the Supercross meet in Anaheim, California.
Speed Week has been brought to you by B.F. Goodrich TA Radials, built for you to take on the road. And by Dodge, a performance revolution, an American revolution.